everybody, and welcome to Brain Balance Live. I just love that happy little ditty at the start, don't you, Heather?
I do indeed, yes.
And
Always
actually,
dancing.
it got me moving, which makes us like, it's a good segue into our topic for today, which, we're going to talk a little bit today about movement and the connection between the brain and the movement. Because, Heather, I will tell you, when we first became Brain Balance parents, we were like, what on earth are we doing?
Right.
These exercises are not like anything that we've thought about doing or anyone else has told us to do. So today, Heather is going to tell us kind of like the method to the madness. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I understand why it's confusing to parents about why are you checking the motor system, and my child is not doing this at loud sound, so I don't think they have sensory issues. So what on earth does this have to do with their behavior, their emotions, their reading and writing and math, etc.? I get it. It is not intuitive. So we talked about the importance of motor skills, the link between movement and learning before, but I just think we need to talk about it again, because these are questions that you don't just use common sense and think, oh yeah, I get that connection. That's not going to happen.
Totally.
But there are over 100 research studies that consistently find the link between sensory motor skills, so sensory motor, and learning, executive functions, behavior, and emotions. It is just very, very consistent. We know this for a fact. And if we go to the first slide here, you'll see I've shown this slide before, but it's a little bit differently. I tweaked it. But a quote from Dr. Rohde at Harvard: movement is crucial to every other brain function, including memory, emotion, language, and learning. Our higher brain functions depend on it. And we're not going to go through all the parts of the brain, but just look in the bottom right, sort of where it says cerebellum. For the longest time, it was believed that the cerebellum was only for motor skills and coordination. And that was because technology had not advanced enough for us to see everything the cerebellum was doing. And then years and years ago, as technology improved and the resolution on pictures improved, it's like, holy cow, there are 200 million neurons that are fired off between the cerebellum when we move, when we engage our motor skills, and the prefrontal cortex for attention, emotional regulation, reading, writing, math, vocabulary, you name it, it impacts about 75 to 80% of our functions. So if you think about what a small part, like percentage of the brain the cerebellum is, and yet it has 75% of the brain's cells, that is not just for motor activity. And another thing that's really counterintuitive is, how can my child be so good at sports and yet we can still find issues there? There are very specific types of motor movements that we look at. We think about this. Are there any skills like, okay, your child's a good athlete, but maybe they're better at throwing than catching? Or what is the hang up on swinging a bat at a baseball? They did fine in t-ball. It's coming at them versus still. And we think about, does the top and the bottom of the body work together? We kind of break it into 3 planes: top of the body and the bottom of the body working together. Sometimes kids will have difficulty with swimming because that's top and bottom of the body, but it's also the left and the right side of the body, which is another plane, and the front and the back of the body. Can they do things where one limb is going out in front of them, the other's going in the back? Usually there are some glitches there. So, I mean, there are times where kids test off the charts on the motor skills. That's great. That means we've eliminated that component of it. But just because your child's athletic does not mean all of those things are in place in the ways they need them for critical thinking, attention, and so forth. It is linked to absolutely everything. And so even on that Harvard research they did, they found that the connections we build not only between the left and the right hemisphere, but also between the front and the back of the brain, cerebellum to prefrontal cortex, because that improves, like I said, about 80% of your cognitive skills at least.
And is that what those exercises do when we're doing them? Since you think of exercise, like you said, as being swimming or playing a sport or doing something like that, that's what the brain balance exercises are kind of there for, to like, while we're doing those movements, are we also making those pathways connect better?
Yeah, yes. In our sessions, we're stimulating those connections, and the exercises we give our families are kind of forcing the brain to use those pathways and make them even stronger, faster. It's like building extra lanes to the highway to get rid of log jams in traffic so that the processing is where it needs to be.
Ah,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, let's go ahead. Just the next slide kind of gives you, we're not going to talk about the stages of play, which is what this picture, the creator of this picture intended it for. But think about the connection here. You have someone, look, maybe kind of trouble with staying on task, trouble with attention. Oh, there's a butterfly. They're not participating. Think about how that impacts socialization. Also, they're not growing their motor skills because they're just sitting at the windowsill instead of engaging in motor play like everyone else is doing. Look where it says onlooker, and kind of to the right at the top. This child does not have a strong core. Therefore, they're having to brace themselves on the floor, and now their hands are not free to engage. They may seem like, oh, they don't want to, they're kind of a loner. They don't want to play with me, when really it's a motor skill getting in the way. A lot of kids get so wonky because they can't hold themselves up at the midline due to a weak core, body awareness, equilibrium. They don't even know what the midline is, that it gets really hard to have eye contact. It's harder to look up like that. And there you lose skills. Keep in mind, if kids, they might get bored because they're just sitting there not participating. Perpetual boredom registers as stress in the brain, and then kids act impulsive. Their attention goes down because their emotional brain takes over. So I just wanted to show just a couple of quick examples of how this can start. You can kind of start to see in how one thing leads to another, leads to another.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yes, that speaks to me so well.
So exactly what all does movement impact? Vocabulary, decreased impulsivity, improved reading. There is so much research about kids having developmental coordination disorder, diagnosed or undiagnosed, or dyspraxia. It's a motor planning problem with motor skills, and how that is predictive of dyslexia and other reading struggles. We know that fine motor skills help improve our motor planning, and motor planning is a precursor to higher level cognitive function. Think about motor planning is, I need to accomplish a task. I use my sensory skills. I use my motor skills. I plan how I'm going to use those things to accomplish the task. And then when I can do that with my sensory motor system, I start learning cognitively how to plan a big task that I have. It's due in a month, and start being able to chop it down into when do I need to have each thing done. The ability to do things in rhythm and timing, keep a beat to music. That helps me sound out words. L, left, front. It helps me hear pauses and inflections. The difference between envelope and envelop. Hearing a pause can change the meaning of a sentence. Oh, that was two separate thoughts. Or, oh, they give me a two-step direction, not a three-step direction. So rhythm and timing games are really important. But in attention span, complex thinking, coordination, predictive abilities. I learned to predict my world by exploring it with my sensory motor skills. As I'm walking to a door, subconsciously, I am using my visual, my body awareness, my equilibrium to predict when to grab the handle. Then I start predicting more important things, what's going to happen next in the story. We talked about emotional regulation. It helps digestion. Even think as adults, if you start being more sedentary, how you may have issues with digestion. Food may not move through you the way it was before, and you start exercising and it does. It is also a motor skill that helps break down food. Yeah. Intestinal motility, so that you don't have leaky gut, that you don't have constipation, bloating, diarrhea. But when we engage our large muscle groups, it vastly improves the oxygen and blood flow to the brain. And in fact, when you look at neuroscientific research, one of the ways they do, it's called functional MRIs, looking at the brain when it's engaged in activity. And one of the ways we know how much activity is happening in different regions of the brain responsible for our executive function abilities is how much blood flow there is going there. So Jansen, he's an educator, wrote just an outstanding book. Strong evidence shows that moderate exercise enhances cognitive processing. It also increases the number of brain cells. It increases the number of brain cells. Movement activities should be as important as so-called bookwork. It increases the number of brain cells.
That is amazing. You know, you think about like exercise and movement. decreasing your stress, but I love that you're kind of connecting like why that happens. Like as an adult, I've just always known like, oh, when I exercise, I feel less stressed. I feel more able to handle what life comes at me. But this is actually like breaking down the brain process. It's fascinating.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that because, I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, endorphins are released, so it makes you feel better. Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
It improves a ton of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that connect your different brain pathways together. Movement improves memory. We're not just talking about exercise. We're also talking about the skill involved in it.
Yeah.
The better the skill, the more these cognitive skills grow. There have even been studies done on like body fat percentage and different, even internal, like the fatty material around organs in boys and girls, and looking at how a higher body fat percentage is very linked to decreased cognitive abilities, decreased reading abilities. So we need it for health, but it actually grows brain pathways. When you exercise, you are not throwing your kids a bone or giving them, movement breaks during exercise or during homework time. You are stimulating the same parts of the brain where they learn reading, writing, math, and so on. These things have been highly linked to achievement across the board.
Love it.
You can't even think of a skill or a subject in school that this is not shown to help. Think about it. We can move on to the next slide. If I don't know where I am in space, how am I going to truly understand spatial concepts? How am I going to understand when I write an assignment due date here, how does that relate to what in the world is going on right now? Sometimes that is a very foreign concept to kids. When we grow their visual motor abilities, that using their visual perception and their motor skills together, now the planner makes sense to me. So even that is a thing. If I can't keep time from a motor standpoint, a lot of these kids don't have a good sense of time. If their auditory processing is going this fast and their visual is going like this, what happens? The strength starts slowing down to try to get in tempo with a struggle. When that doesn't happen, it's like watching a glitchy video.
Yeah.
You're watching a video. Nobody wants to watch that. You're going to hit pause. Let's try again. Let's get out of the app, get back in. But can you imagine living life where every different portions of what you're processing are in different tempos? Sense of time becomes a foreign concept.
Yes.
And so equilibrium and body awareness are parts of our internal sensory system. Both of these have to do with where am I in space. Body awareness is information we get through the muscles, joints, tendons, connective tissue. Issues with body awareness have a lot to do with social skills. When I feel my body the way I'm supposed to, I can pick up on your nonverbals, what your body language, tone of voice, facial expressions are telling me. Sometimes kids will appear to be lacking empathy when really the cues you gave them just went over their head. They're not in touch with their bodies, therefore they don't pick up on yours. Decreased body awareness often results in rejection sensitivity. If what my communication partner conveys to me is anything other than overt happiness and approval, they're mad at me or they don't approve of me. And then they're, oh yeah, you're mad at me. And then they might start acting disrespectful or defiant. We know behavior is communication. I am struggling and I don't have the toolkit to handle this. Transitions can be very difficult with these issues. I just got my bearings about me and now there's all kinds of fray and I'm discombobulated and I got to get reoriented to a whole new thing. A lot of kids will bite themselves or others, and they may not care about hygiene because, again, they're not in touch. You may have to always be telling them to brush their teeth, put on deodorant, take a shower. And when you take a shower, actually clean all the body parts. I mean, not some of them will take it, but you're like, it seems careless, but really body awareness is involved there. It's involved in growing a sense of self. Our first stages of growing body awareness are I am my body. And then we don't get to the deeper stages of who they are in their heart and their core. And then they lack intrinsic motivation. They may not know what listening means. Listen, you may need to overtly tell them when you're listening, my hands stay quiet in my lap, my feet stay still so I don't distract others. My eyes look at the person, my ears are tuned in. You might have to explicitly teach these things. It does not mean they're being difficult. Being a space invader or bull in a china closet or other big signs of this. But work against weight or resistance, push-ups, lifting, pushing, pulling. Chores are really good here. Dusting, washing the table, washing dishes, stirring, kneading dough, And then you can also, yoga poses, body socks, jumping. I love the idea of having TheraBands, those stretchy little bands that people can use for resistance training, having them wrapped around a desk chair at school, and they can be pulling against that. It's very regulating. It helps them stay seated, not disrupt others and get in trouble. You're growing their body awareness and their attention and regulation at the same time. Okay, let's move on. And another tie, I'm going to talk about equilibrium a little bit differently here. This also has to do with where am I in space, but this is information we get from motion and gravity. A lot of kids who are running around all the time are subconsciously seeking body awareness input. I don't feel with my body the way I need to, but every time I run or walk around the classroom and I'm supposed to be sitting still, I feel my body better because my foot pounds on the floor. I'm seeking motion because my equilibrium is off. So there's that TheraBand around the desk chair. You can also have little spinny things they can sit on. You see this little boy in the bottom left. Yes. Think about another benefit of exercise is think about when you're running, how you're kind of going up and down. It is equilibrium that allows me to see clearly ahead where it doesn't just look swooshy. Mm-hmm. That is visual perception and equilibrium working together. That is a very important skill that translates as I'm running. I'm moving closer to a target ahead, right? With copying from the chalkboard, what am I doing? I'm also changing where I'm seeing things. So running, anything where I'm in motion can help me copy from the chalkboard to the desk, can help make me a safer driver because I see where my turn is. And then I can still look at, do I need gas? I'm looking far, mid, near all the time. Being able to copy, I've got a little passage here and I'm supposed to write a summary here. I don't lose it, I change where I'm seeing it. 68% of underperforming students have confirmed equilibrium issues. And most of the time it is not evident unless you test for it. That is why we do this. And it's very confusing to families often because you think of equilibrium, you think, well, they'd just be falling on their face all the time.
Correct. That's what I was thinking. Like, are they bobbing and weaving? Like,
yeah, and I could be MVP on any team I played when I was little. And yet my equilibrium was squat. I had those eye tumors that really messed up my equilibrium. And that's why it took so long for people to know it because I was so athletic. I was compensating. Anytime you're compensating, you're taking out of another bucket.
Yeah.
And often it is the emotions bucket.
Yeah.
So I have some signs there that may not be obvious. Clingy, little ones, you might see them holding on to mommy or daddy's leg. A lot of times older kids will back into a wall, like if they're at a party, they don't feel anchored in themselves. So they will rely on, okay, now I have my bearings because I'm backed into something. It's very, very tiring. A lot of kids will always want to be hanging upside down off of the furniture if they are undersensitive to motion. If they're oversensitive, that's the ones they don't like swinging. They don't like those rides at the amusement park. But you may see decreased focus, decreased memory. A lot of kids are really overwhelmed trying to follow conversations or instructions, especially with background noise. They may think, what is wrong with, it leads to a lot of social anxiety. What is wrong with me? This is supposed to be fun talking to friends. I find it very overwhelming. Lots of anxiety, lots of decreased concentration, lots of decreased visual perception and processing that is often underlying literacy challenges or mistakes on math that look careless that aren't. So, okay, let's move on. So what are some things we can do? I mean, get out and move your bodies. I mean, we've talked about scavenger hunts. We've talked about outdoor bingo. I'm always putting up fun ideas of how to get movement on my page. But other things to think about, Simon Says is old school. It is, kids still love it. A lot of the old school stuff kids don't like anymore because they have all the fancy stuff that, I didn't have growing up, all the technology. Kids love Simon Says. And not only have them do activities using both sides of their body. You see the boy in the top left, and that's balance because he's standing on one foot and he's using both sides of his body. That's very important. Bilateral synchronization, being able to use both sides of your body. We do it all the time without realizing it. Stabilize your hand with one paper while you write with the other. I'm crossing the midline even as I write, left to right across. My eyes have to cross the midline to go left to the right across what I'm reading. Auditory signals have to cross the midline so that all 7 pathways work together and I can follow directions and sound out words. We need both sides of the body working together. And one of the reasons it's so good is because you're also working on impulse control. They have to wait and hear if you say Simon says before they carry out the activity. So you're also working on that at the same time. Animal exercises, you know, you can have a spinner and whatever they land on, you know, they swim like a fish. You have them do animal moves. This makes it fun for younger ones. Pool noodles, you could have them have an obstacle course set up or have them carry out activities, and they need to keep the pool noodle between their feet at all times. You're working on balance and planning both sides of the body at the same time. It's excellent. I love this little boy he's doing a core exercise, but it's also bilateral. He's using both sides of the body. Ninja, maybe they're into ninjas, and you could have pictures of ninjas and match what they're doing with their body. And then they can even put a paper clip matching the one that they've already completed. So that's awareness and matching that and knowing which activity they did, really getting the cognition and the motor going together. These little girls are playing those rhythm games. These are still popular. A lot of the kids who come in really still like these, you know, where you have a little song or something where, you know, and music is excellent. It stimulates the whole brain. There's rhythm and motor movement using both sides of the body, and it's a social activity. Super fun. That is such a fun way to work on skills that can get in the way of the early stages of reading.
I love that. We can still do our down, baby, down by the roller coaster.
I remember whatever. Down by the banks of Hank Pink, where the bullfrogs jump from bank to bank.
Yes.
Man, that was like from kindergarten.
Yes.
That was at least 20 years ago. At least.
Listen, we're not even going to count.
I said at least. I'm rounding down.
I don't want to think about how long it's been.
And don't forget, fine motor skills. I talked about how that improves planning for growth. You know, that helps you with gross motor, helps fine motor helps gross motor. But do they hate writing? Are they resisting writing? Have them put together cool robots, stuff like that, where they are being creative, but they're having to use fine motor skills at the same time. Playing an instrument. Think about that. You are doing one set of motions with one hand, a different set of motions with the other hand. It could be playing the piano. You're using fine motor. You're using both sides of your body. Music stimulates. It lights up pretty much the whole brain on what it grows. And how fantastic. And then maybe they can even write songs. Then they're working on lyrics and language, you know, and it's a social activity if they play for other people. So I'm just trying to show you that you can think outside the box and not just say, we're going to go walking for 30 minutes. You know, that may not really be appealing to, but playing tennis, you know, it can be a sport. And actually, when you play group games, you have to use your skills even more than you need to when you're doing something by yourself. Any movement's better than none, but mix in not just the one-off stuff with group activities. If that is not going to be a nightmare in your house. If it is, then there's a reason. So, and we need to address that. But I'm just trying to kind of get you to think outside the box on really fun ways to incorporate movement.
Yeah, these are great. Love it.
Okay. And it's so important to note that we need automaticity. And what that means, think about when you're driving. How many things can you have your mind on? You're talking to your kids, you answer the phone. You don't have to say, silence, everyone. I'm coming to a red light. I need to think about how hard to hit the brake pedal. Do I turn up or down to go left and right? Which mirror do I look in again? You just do it, right? Mm-hmm. We all have a certain cognitive capacity. When I reach this much, that's when you're saying, sorry, honey, I snapped at you. It was a stressful day. I'm sorry. We all have those moments. But the reason it doesn't happen all the time is because we have regulation and we have a lot of things we do in automation mode. When we're driving, it doesn't move the needle on where we are on our load. The more laborious something is for someone, the more it moves the needle and the less space I have left to give that bump in the road. The less space I have when I'm handwriting to think about what it is I wanted to say. If you have kids who maybe they manage their handwriting looks okay. How laborious is it? How much effort are they having to put into the act of writing? How hard do I hold the pencil? How hard do I press down? Did I space my words properly? Are they floating or are they on the line? We need that stuff to be automated. It keeps your whole cognitive load open so that they can think about what it was they wanted to say. This is highly predictive now and years from now of the quality and the quantity of content written. So if you ever get tests back, you're thinking, I know they knew this stuff and they didn't, what they wrote down doesn't even come close to revealing what they knew about this. Maybe this is why. So it is also predictive of reading for deep understanding years down the road. It is predictive of math ability. Are they having to struggle? If they do the math in their head, they know it, but when they are told to show their work because teachers want to see math reasoning, do they inadvertently add the wrong numbers because their columns are like this? They're doing the math right, but they're adding the wrong digits because they can't line up, and they're called sloppy, lazy. They're just slopping it down. Most likely that is not sloppiness. That is a difficulty they're having that is not evident. So you work on fine motor, lacing, beading activities, making friendship bracelets, any sort of like knitting, crochet stuff, things with clothespins. Think of finger painting. Do things. There are so many fun ways to work on fine motor skills also. And those so often go ignored because it's legible. They just happen to not have great handwriting. It needs to be automated. This is one of the top things that will lead to task avoidance on academics because every part of homework involves fine motor skills and using your visual perception with your fine motor. That's called visual motor integration. So
I feel like the work that we've done over the last few years, even in this last year, there would be papers that would come home that I would think, this looks like a different person's handwriting. He's gotten so much better, which tells me we're like heading in the right direction because it's like so pretty and so neat and nice. And I'm like, I don't even recognize this as his handwriting anymore.
It's huge.
Cool.
Yeah. It's huge. And on the flip side of that, I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah. I saw a student's handwriting the other day, and it was so beautiful that I was thinking this should be a font that on computers, no kidding.
Yeah.
But it took her forever to do it. And then when it comes to written assignments, she rushes through tests because the act of writing takes so long that she can't get all of her thoughts down.
Yeah.
And she was white knuckling the pencil. So then she's tired. And every year the assignments get longer and longer. Her writing is beautiful. Yeah. It is not automated. Yeah. Automation matters. Things need to be in sync. Let the easy stuff be easy. And it frees up my brain to learn the new material. It frees up my brain to pause, hit the brake pedal, and before I speak and act. It keeps me engaged. How is it going? How much harder is it to be engaged when certain acts that everyone else is doing automatically are so laborious?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just love that you've connected all of this and shown us how the movement actually does improve these brain pathways and given us all these wonderful tips to keep us motivated to keep doing the things, even if we can't see like directly how they're affecting, our growth.
Yeah, they are absolutely foundational. It's not intuitive. So I wanted to visit this because I get this question a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a great question.
I love it. And as you guys can see there, we've got all the ways that you can follow Heather. Make sure you are following her at The Hidden Churn, and then take a screenshot of all these brain balance centers, go in, get an assessment, and start learning these very, very quality movements along with all the exercise movements that we know that we're trying to do. And Heather is just the greatest resource. Thank you so much, Heather, for being available to us and talking so candidly with me each week.
Thank you, Jen. I love coming here, and I appreciate everyone who shared their time with us. And Dr. Brian and I will be back this Thursday at 3:35. He was on vacation, but we're getting back in the swing on Thursdays also.
Amazing. All right, everybody, we'll keep moving, and we'll see you in the comments. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.